Hi guys, it's CATALEAH. So in today's video, I'm going to tell you everything that I know about crested geckos. All of this information that I'm about to share with you I've gathered through research in books, websites, and articles, and from advice through more experienced keepers and breeders, as well as through my own knowledge acquired over the last 5 years of keeping and breeding crested geckos. Personally, I am pursuing an animal science related degree with emphasis on reptiles and exotics. However, I'm not calling myself an expert, and I think it is incredibly important to do your own research from multiple sources when learning about an animal and deciding whether or not to own one. So, to get started, let's talk about the basics. This is a crested gecko. Her name is Scarlet, and she's one of my veteran crested geckos that I've had for quite a long time now, and she was in videos on my channel years ago. So the crested gecko, scientifically named Coralophus ciliatus, is endemic to New Caledonia, which is a series of islands off of the east coast of Australia. Crested geckos are also sometimes called the eyelash gecko because of these scales that protrude around their eyes, giving them an eyelash effect. Fabulous! They are capable of vocalizing with a variety of noises, although not quite as many vocalizations as their bigger cousin, the Leachies gecko. They have the capability of detaching their tails and dropping them off of their body, and they tend to do this when they're scared, threatened, or if you happen to vacuum in the same room as them. And sadly, they don't grow their tails back, so if they drop them, they have a cute little stub where the tail used to be, which I like to call a frog butt. They do not have movable eyelids and instead have a fixed translucent eyelid, which is called a spectacle or an eye cap, and they clean this eye cap by licking their eyeballs. It's pretty cute, I think, and weird. It's also weird. They have a semi-prehensile tail, which means it can support part of their body weight and can curl around branches and things nearby to help offer some extra support. Crested geckos have sticky feet, which helps them climb up vertical surfaces, smooth surfaces like glass, and sometimes even upside down. So crested geckos were actually thought to be extinct up until 1994 when they were rediscovered. In captivity, they come in many different color and pattern combinations. Some of the more common morphs include the flame and the harlequin, while some of the more sought-after morphs like the lily whites and tricolors can be a bit more pricey. Crested geckos themselves can cost anywhere from $40 to $5,000 depending on the morph and the rarity of it. These prices typically reflect the value of the animal on the basis of color, structure, and sometimes lineage. This guy is named Zeppelin. He's one of my other veteran geckos. So I do plan on doing individual videos about the specific care requirements for crested geckos. But for the purpose of this video, I will give you a basic overview of each category. So, crested geckos are omnivorous, in the wild consuming various fruits and nectars, as well as a variety of insects. In captivity, we feed them commercially available diets that provide all of the vitamins and nutrients that they need. These diets are usually powdered and mixed with water. My favorite, and my gecko's favorite, is Pangea, which comes in many fruity and buggy flavors like watermelon, apricot, and insects. Pangea also has diets made for specific purposes, such as the breeding formula, which has added protein for growing hatchlings and breeder geckos. And then there's the treat version of Pangea, which is basically meant to add variety and fun to your gecko's diet. Pangea has supplements too, which are meant to increase the health of your gecko through adding extra calcium and extra vitamins. There are a few really good crested gecko diet brands out there, however my recommendation is of course Pangea. However, for the best interest and health of your gecko, it is recommended to supplement them with live insects, maybe every week or every couple of days, such as dubia roaches, crickets, mealworms, waxworms. These geckos do need to be on a recommended crested gecko staple diet, as they cannot survive on purely insects. There are cases showing extreme metabolic bone disease in crested geckos that were not fed a proper diet for an extended period of time. So, feeding them a great diet with supplements, vitamins, and live bugs is definitely the way to go. You okay, Zeppelin? Just hanging out there, buddy? So, housing is a big topic for crested geckos. Crested geckos need different size enclosures for the different stages of their life. Basically, you should go by their weight to determine the size and type of enclosure. As a young hatchling, it's recommended that they stay in a smaller enclosure, such as a medium or large critter keeper or a small vertical exoterra. If a gecko is small and kept in a large enclosure, it can have a difficult time finding its food, and it can be difficult to monitor the gecko's health. Keeping them in an enclosure relative to their size is the best thing for them while they grow into develop. Ideally, crested geckos should be kept in a vertical enclosure rather than a horizontal one, as these geckos are primarily arboreal, meaning they're seen in the wild climbing high up in the treetops, and they tend to spend most of their time high up off of the ground. To imitate their natural environment, a great enclosure for a large juvenile or adult crested gecko would be an 18 by 18 by 36 inch vertical terrarium. The minimum caging requirements, it's debatable, but I would say the minimum is a 12 by 12 by 18 vertical tank. Decorating the enclosure is best achieved by adding a lot of leafy plants and vines that they can hide on and under. And I also get a lot of my decorations from Pangea. They have a huge variety of decorations like cork bark, wood and branches, caves and hides, hanging leaves and vines, and tons of other stuff. These vines and leaves are great though, and Pangea has been developing a lot of different styles and colors. I think these look really nice, and I will link in the description to where you can get these yourself if you want some. The leaves provide a great hidey spot for your crested gecko to sleep under during the day, and the vines provide for a beautiful lounging place for your gecko. I'd also like to recommend a wall feeder mount paired with the biodegradable cups that Pangea offers, so you can feed your gecko up off of the ground and help the environment while you're at it. So there are a lot of options when it comes to substrate for crested geckos. For hatchlings and younger geckos, I would almost always recommend paper towels so you can accurately monitor their stools and to make sure they're actually pooping healthily and regularly. And paper towels are safe because it's very uncommon for them to accidentally ingest them like they could with a loose substrate. Adult crested geckos can have a tropical substrate like soil or coconut husk that is non-toxic, has no added dyes or pesticides, and has easily digestible pieces, so if it were accidentally ingested, it wouldn't harm or impale your gecko. However, I would personally recommend paper towels for easy cleanup and easy access to monitor your gecko's health, unless you have the capability of creating a bioactive environment. In the description, I will link some info on how to create bioactive environments for your geckos, and I made one in a video a long time ago, but it really wasn't that perfect, but I will link it on the screen now if you want to watch that anyways. I'm soon going to be doing an updated version of that, so stay tuned. Another thing to consider when choosing an enclosure for a crested gecko is humidity, because at certain points of the day they do need quite a bit of humidity. They drink the droplets formed in their environment by spraying or misting or just from the humidity. This is why you need to spray your crested gecko once or twice daily or hook up a misting system for ease of husbandry. It's recommended to spray down their enclosure during dusk or at night so the droplets don't dissipate as quickly and they have a chance to get up and actually drink some because they'll be active and crawling around their tank. Crested geckos should not be kept constantly humid though, because constant saturation of the environment can actually cause fungal or respiratory issues. Spray their environment heavily once at night and then let it dry throughout the day. But if you do live in a more arid environment, I would recommend spraying twice a day. Easy peasy. So crested geckos typically prefer cooler temperatures, so if your house stays between 65 and 85 degrees, then you can usually keep them at room temperature. Extreme temperatures for prolonged periods of time is risky and can lead to dehydration or death. So make sure you put a temperature and humidity gauge in your crested gecko's enclosure to make sure that they have adequate temperatures and humidity. Oh, and when building enclosures for your geckos, keep in mind that you want to house them individually for the best health of your gecko. Some experienced keepers have had success cohabitating female crested geckos in very large enclosures. However, it is generally in the best interest of your animal to keep them individually and alone in their enclosure, and this is to prevent fighting and competition over resources, food, and territory. Male crested geckos should never be put in an enclosure together because they will constantly and excessively fight, giving each other wounds and eventually killing one another due to hormones and competition for territory and females. It's just how their brain works. That's all they can think about is females, food, females, food. A male and female gecko shouldn't be housed together either because the male will just excessively breed the female, which the female could sustain injuries and become ill to losing her calcium reserves and constantly laying eggs, and the male can become sick due to constantly being focused on reproducing rather than eating and taking care of himself. It's just generally a good idea to house them individually. However, if you do want to breed your crested geckos, I'm going to be making an entire tutorial how to, pros and cons, that sort of thing, all about breeding crested geckos. So watch for that video, that will be coming up soon. And subscribe if you're not already so you don't miss the video. That aside, something else to remember is that it is always in the best interest of your animal to make sure you find a gecko and reptile approved veterinarian before you buy your gecko in case of emergencies. You want to make sure you already have a veterinarian lined up just in case of sudden illnesses. So I think that about covers the basics of crested geckos. If there's something that I missed, please tell me in the comments and ask away and I'll answer your questions. What are you doing, Calypso? This is Calypso. She's one of my breeder females. She is very fired down right now. Oh yeah, and crested geckos have the capability of firing up and firing down, which basically means the chromatophores, or their skin pigments, darken or lighten depending on their environment. So if you spray their enclosure very heavily, you'll notice in 30 minutes or so, your gecko will be a lot darker to match the environment. So, thank you to Pangea for sponsoring this video. And I mentioned their products a few times in the video, but they also sell crested geckos on their website, so check them out at pangeareptile.com. I'll link that in the description and the comments if you want to check out their products. This is some calcium with D3 that I got from them that I put on my crested gecko's food every now and then. Pangea Crested Gecko Diet. That aside, I would like to tell you guys that I am going to the NARBC Reptile Expo in Arlington, Texas. And this is going to be September 14th and 15th. So if you're in Texas, you should definitely come by. You can buy your tickets online at narbc.com. I will link that in the description and in the comments, so you should definitely come to the show if you're in Texas, and if you're not in Texas, you should fly here to come to the show because it's that awesome. I promise. Plus, I will be there and I'll be filming and walking around the whole weekend at the show, having fun and meeting you guys, so please come to NARBC. And if you do come, it helps me a lot if you write me as a reference for how you found out about the show. Hope you learned something new about crested geckos today. If I just repeated what you already knew, well, I will be making more specific videos about crested geckos following this one, in no particular order. But if you have a certain topic you'd like for me to cover first about these geckos, then comment please and tell me what is most important for you to hear first. And if you guys will, check out my website at CATALEAH.com. On there I've got my merchandise. I have some animals on there as well. So check out my website at CATALEAH.com, and I also have a little forum on there. You can sign up and make a profile, and you can chit chat with me on my website. So yeah, follow me on my social medias on Facebook at CATALEAH and CATALEAH'S CRITTERS, and Instagram at CATALEAH. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!
Thank you.